Good morning, everybody. We welcome, on behalf of Chandigarh Lalit Kala Akademi, the Executive Committee of the Chandigarh Lalit Kala Akademi, and the people of Chandigarh. We welcome you all. I'll begin from this side. Dr. Rubina Karode, Mr. Atul Dodiya, Dr. Tasneem Mehta, Anju Dodiya, Bhavna Kakkar, Sadanand, Menon, Alka Pande. I'm calling her Alka Pande knowingly because she's a friend. I can take this liberty with her. I'm not calling her Dr. Alka Pande. She has, traveled ever since she went from here, and such galaxies. And she will be giving her presentation. I welcome you, Dr. Alka, too.
It's always wonderful to come back to a city where one, in some ways, grew up. I spent 18 years of my life here, almost 1/3 of my life. And it's always a deja vu when I come back to see familiar faces, some of them aging like I am, but I think the autumn of one's life is really a beautiful time. It's a beautiful time, and I think for all of us in these days of modern medicine and modern living, in spite of stresses, it's a wonderful, long autumn and reminds me of an old song called Autumn Leaves by Frank Sinatra, which had all the, the flavors, the mellowness, the beauty, and I think it's wonderful. I always want to thank my friend Diwan Manna, who keeps calling me back, and thanks to him that I come back and re-establish my old connections. Also to say that Diwan and I collaborated on a very important and significant project, which was the folk instruments and music of Punjab, where he did all the photographs and brought in so much of visual imagery to my text, and text image always makes a wonderful collaboration. The work went many places, and I did a big exhibition in Paris at the Cité de la Musique based on some of the things which I had done in the book, because an important curator saw my book at the V&A and came back to India and invited me to not only do the scenography but also do part of the programming in a wonderful show which was called Glory of the Princes and Tribute to the Gods, which was on music. I had been the chairperson of the Lalit Kala for a number of years here in Chandigarh, no way related to the central Lalit Kala, and I thought of my old friend Diwan, who was a great photographer, but with that also a wonderful mind, because he was one of the first conceptual photographers of the country, and still his work stands out for it. And I'm so happy that where he has taken the Lalit Kala in the last 7 years, he has really brought it to another kind of a cosmos. And when he asked me to come for the seminar and said, and in his own way, when I asked him, what should I, do you have anything in mind? He says, nahi, aapko jisme baat karna hai, in the way that he speaks. So I thought that something which has been, in the last 12 years that I've been in Delhi, something which I see constantly happening, particularly with globalization and the opening up of the economy, with the social networks, with Wikipedia. In fact, all of us in some ways are always dipping into it for information, not for research. I thought the topic of center, peripheries, constellations would be interesting. In some ways, many people, I met Girish in Delhi just now, just the day before I was coming, because he was doing a curated walk at the NGMA, and he said, I went to your city. So I love it that Chandigarh is my city, but I'm also a very old woman. I was born in Kolkata, raised in Delhi, worked for a bit in Mumbai. I got married and then came from Mumbai to Chandigarh in 1981, almost 31 years ago. So you can imagine what Chandigarh then was. One rode bicycles then, and now there's no really bicycle path here. I also saw this city change a little bit. But then when I relocated to Delhi, where I did my undergraduate studies, everybody thought I was from Chandigarh. And I relocated back to a city where I grew up and did all my school and college education. That looked a bit alien to me. So, I've actually gone through this firmament, through the constellations, like the stars. And yesterday, when Sadanand was talking of art history and the linearity of art history, I had a strong sense of feeling that yes, there is a linearity, but sometimes it's a bit unfair to be called linear, because most of us here who trained in the classical art history mold, we also look at many histories. And today I'm going to be looking at many histories. I'm going to be looking at the many Indias. I'm going to be looking at this particular trajectory of center periphery constellations, because I really believe that art history itself is moving in many, many layers. There is, which is the periphery, which is the center. In fact, if you see what Diwan has done with the Chandigarh Lalit Kala Akademi, this kind of work, this kind of intensity, this kind of passion, this kind of interaction is probably not happening in the major metropolises which are there. So what is happening? We've got a Kochi Biennale happening, the first Biennale in the country, happening in a peripheral town. And these are little issues that I'm going to be, kind of talking about when I talk of center periphery constellations. And yesterday when Anju started talking of a kind of a schizophrenia, we see that, the anxieties, the tensions, we see a lot of that in the center periphery. We see the decentered, we see the allegorical, we see the schizophrenic, but we choose to diagnose its symptoms in a very, very postmodern language, which is usually treated by its protagonists and antagonists alike as a crisis of cultural authority, specifically of an authority vested in the Western European culture and its institutions. And today, what we see is that the hegemony of European civilization is drawing to a close. And this is not really a new conception in the 50s, because, when we talk of art history, when we talk of visual culture, because we are not talking of a fine art practice today here at all. Most of the artists who are working and whose work you will be seeing is not of a fine art historical process. They're actually all visual artists. They are working not just as documenters or archivists, as Atul had said. They're also working about the self, as Anju had shown yesterday. They are looking at their own genealogies. They're looking at autobiographies. And many of these terminologies, the holy grail of a visual culture comes from the West. So this whole thing, we cannot keep the Lyottardian definition away. We cannot talk of contemporary art history without looking at people like Foucault, Derrida, Lyotard. We cannot keep that away from our own historical practices. We have to have these parallel trajectories of the Rasa theory, of the Natya Shastra, of the interdisciplinary, which was already existing in India, but is being looked at with a contemporary lens from a Western theoretical base. So what I'm going to do really today when I talk of this kind of center, periphery, constellations, I also go back to Toynbee's discussion in the 8th volume in the study of history, when he talks of encountering different cultures by means other than the shock of dominations and conquests. I also look at Derrida's of grammatology, and later when we are talking of self and the other, I'm going to be looking a little bit at the theoretical underpinnings of Paul Ricoeur, where he talks of the discovery of plurality of cultures. Now, when we look at center periphery, I do want to just give a dictionary meaning, the Oxford Dictionary meaning of what a periphery is, what a center is, and what the constellation is. When you look at a dictionary meaning of the center, you see that which is placed in the central position. That is the verb meaning of it. When you look at a metropolis, which I slash the center with, it is a city at the center of some specified activity. When we look at the periphery, we look at the Latin peripheria or the Greek peripheria, you look at what is revolving around, and there are three atmospheric layers which are formally regarded as enveloping the earth, and that is the periphery. When you look at the constellation, you look at a group or a cluster, specially of brilliant things. And when you look at the Lacanian model or the psychoanalytical model, you look at a group of associated ideas or personality components. So in today's lecture, which I want to basically have as a kind of a dialogue with you, is I'm looking at two models really. I'm looking at the Indian Art Fair, which is done in Delhi. It was the 5th year this year, and it becomes a locus or a center where the brightest and the best of the production of art, which goes into the domain or the cosmos of mercantilist exchange. And then we look at the Kochi Biennale, which is done in South India, which is a non-mercantilist space, where again the brightest and the best are invited. It becomes like Kassel, where Andrew Bod established the Documenta in 1954 to regenerate the city by doing an exhibition for 100 days. So like Kassel, like the Documenta, like the Biennales across the world, the Kochi Biennale has also been started as a space not only to show art, but also as a space for regeneration. This is what the models of the West are, and this is what is happening, and this is what shows the kind of fluidity which is there as part of a globalized structure and culture. The concept of the Biennale as a regenerating and rejuvenating force is in place, possibly not normal geographical centers like Kassel, Edinburgh, Sharjah. The idea behind the Biennale is to change the public's image of space, to bring the space from the peripheries to the global art map in the center. I also wanted, and in fact I'm very happy that a couple of the artists are here, I did a kind of a grouping, like the Navarasas, 9 artists whose work I'm going to show you how the movement from the center to the peripheries, whether they stay in metropolis towns, whether they go out of the geography of their city to Europe and come back, and then what happens. There are many questions which I'd like to just pose to you, where you could answer, what makes the center, what makes the periphery, is there an interconnection, are they moving together, what is the new firmament, what is the new constellation. So the artists whose work, some of the works I'm going to show. Why I'm being hesitant is because 2 of them are here, Anju and Atul. I was going to show their works, but you've had a really wonderful showing of both the artists, a very evocative, very interior kind of expression, very bold by Anju, a beautiful kind of a mapping done by Atul, who's shown the work, so I'm not now going to talk so much about their work, but maybe just show some of their works. Bharti Kher, Chintan Upadhyay, Jagannath Panda, Ellen Talur, Ravinder Reddy, Sonia Khurana, and of course our great import-export to the West, Subodh Gupta. So I wanted to just show these works and talk a little bit, very little about the artists, and then leave it to all of you to see for yourselves, because even with visual culture, like I hear so many people saying, and Atul himself made this point, that I make the work that I do. The references are mine. I do not care if the other person understands or does not understand. But the viewer on the other hand says that if we do not understand, how are we supposed to like the work? So you see these kind of very interesting dialogues which happen, for which are there kind of specified answers, because sometimes curators today don't even want to put a text on the wall. They don't want to put the didactics on the wall. But there are some curators who want to explain everything. So what is it that the person wants to do? Do they want to guide you into the showing of the work, like you have these information recordings when you go to museums where you stand in front of a painting and why is the painting significant? Or as many contemporary artists feel, draw your own informations by seeing the work. So I'm now just going to show you some of the works. I will begin with Anju's work. I hope my information is correct about, but let's not talk about when you were born. Just to say that you received your diploma from the JJ College of Art in '86, and her very interior, very autobiographical work, as she herself said, sometimes it's fictionalized, talks of her own self-expression, raised in the city of Mumbai. But if I remember in a conversation we had in Abu Dhabi, you had some education out of the country as well when you were younger, no?
A little while in Dubai.
Yeah, a little while in Dubai. So her visual imagery is her own. Then we come to her husband, the boy from Ghatkopar, who now has moved various layers of geographies, went to the Beaux-Arts to study, comes back, and what happens to him when he comes back, and the imagery that he is drawing from. He is taking imageries which would be probably in some ways from the periphery. He is very much enamored of Gandhi. So it's a national image. It's a larger than life image. So what happens when such artists, what do their visual, how do they express their visual maps? Let me put it like that. Let me show these two works and then we go on to Bharti Kher, who I think is a reversal of the diaspora. She comes from the UK, comes to India because she marries Subodh Gupta and takes in a cultural symbol from us, and we sometimes jokingly refer to her as Bindi Bharati. This is an image which is there from the Arsenale in Venice, and I go straight to the Indian Art Fair. This was the 2013 Art Fair. Here is a work from a gallery called Gallery Art Chill, if you please, which is a gallery based in Jaipur. And the work is that of Akash Choyal. He's an artist who comes from a peripheral town. This is Manjunath Kamat, again, who was raised in Mysore, comes from a smaller town, now lives in Delhi. And he's working with, not just with painting, sculpture, but digital manipulations. Just showing you how the art fair is looking. It could be anywhere in the world. It could be Arco, it could be Basel, except that people here are deliberately taking this picture because you can't even by their clothes make out their cultural identities. You cannot. It could be anywhere in the world. This is the lounge. Again, can you say it's India specific? You cannot. It could be anywhere. It's part of this huge McDonaldization of culture. It's part of this whole thing of the homogeneity of globalization. This is Anju's work. I've just taken some random images for you to, but since she's spoken yesterday, I think it would be, this was also shown yesterday, it would be too much for me to be, speaking about her work in front of the artist herself. This is Atul's earlier work. He's already shown works for the last 1 year. Now, I wanted to show also the work of Bharti Kher. Her works actually are quite heterogeneous. These are sculptures which she has made from the mid-2000s. They combine human parts and animal parts to create a hybrid figure that confronts the viewer with a compelling mixture of sexuality and monstrosity.
This work is necessarily not Indian, as we would like to, because as we talk of many Indias, we also talk of an internationalism and a global cosmopolitanism, which is very much part of a lot of young artists probably who do not want to say, why should we be Indian artists in the southeast section of a museum? They want also to be artists like any artist in the world. Nobody likes to be labeled as Indian artists. They don't mind being called artists of Indian origin, but I'm just trying to show you that these are works, of course, one of her most famous works, which was also shown in Basel. The skin speaks a language not its own. I think it's probably in Rubina. You're probably in your museum now. This is absence of a assignable cause, again with bindis, fiberglass sculptures. This was also at the Basel Fair about 2-3 years ago. Her earlier work, but this work again resonates with the paintings, the two-dimensional work she does. I also included Chintan because he grew up in Rajasthan, small town, which was in fact Rajasthan known for more its miniature paintings, and he kind of made a conscious decision to leave Rajasthan because he said in an interview long ago, I feared that I won't grow there. And he went off to Baroda, where he enjoyed the narrative style of painting which was then in vogue, which was emblematic of the works of Ghulam Sheikh and Rupen Khakkar, who he was very deeply influenced by. But then he wanted definitely, as any young person, he wanted to create his own language, and therefore he started creating images which had a kind of an eerie kind of a look to it, and wanted to hammer the established aesthetics of that time. And his paintings themselves were critiques of painterly established norms. He also did a lot of mutated forms of babies, but somewhere you can see the flatness of the miniatures coming in, of the way he primes his canvas, and the paintings which he's done on the body of these almost mutant babies. He says that my philosophy is guided by work. I don't decide beforehand what I do. Why I also included him is that he set up a foundation back in Rajasthan called Sundaram. So from where he goes, from this little periphery, goes off to Baroda for a training, opts to live in Mumbai, now is in the metropolis of Delhi, but he has established a kind of a foundation in a small peripheral rural village in Rajasthan, where very interesting work is being done. Then I go to my friend Jagannath Panda. He's the son of a local priest, of a Panda in Bhubaneswar. He goes off, he had gone off to Japan, he goes back to the Royal College of Art on an INLAC scholarship. He comes back and his images are extremely interesting. His work is also based on his personal experiences, both as a rural migrant and a city dweller. They represent the artist's projections about the not so distant future. His drawings are beautiful, very realistic, but at the same time, he does not offer the viewer a reference to the subject's existence. Or rather, he does not create a sense of panorama in his paintings, but he uses external materials such as silver foil, thread, tracing sheets to stress upon the reality of the material. Here he's made a peacock and he's put velvet over it. Again, another artist who's in fact won the Skoda Prize this year, Ellen Tallur. He comes again from a very, very small village. He said, you have to come to my studio in Karnataka, which is really in the deep interiors. He lives between his village and Korea and is creating absolutely stunning works which are really a cross between tradition and modernity, looking at traditional ways of casting, of brass casting, and very, very, kind of works which talk of like in this he calls it nanotechnology blessings, a thinking conceptual artist. Most of our one of the signatures of our contemporary artists are that they are not just looking at surfaces, not the Greenbergian surface techniques anymore, but they're also thinking and looking more at the ways. In fact, Atul had mentioned one of the Arte Povera artists, looking at materials, looking at quite found materials, inexpensive materials, very much like the Arte Povera style, and yet conceptually thinking of it in a different way. This is the Bhaolanji Museum, where he had a wonderful showing at Tasneem's museum. And then I wanted to talk of Ravinder Reddy. Again, coming from a very, very small town. He lives even now in Andhra Pradesh, in Vishakhapatnam. He was born in Suryapet in Andhra Pradesh and did his BA and MA from the MS University in Baroda. He was looking at the Indian sculptures of the Mathura art, of the full-bodied yakshis of Mathura, Mathura sculptures. But then he went off in the early 80s to my alma mater in some ways, Goldsmiths College in the University of London, and also he worked at the Royal College, and then his language kind of changes. He still sticks to the kind of, an archaic, almost primitivism which is present in his art, and his contemporary nymphs range from coy adolescent girls to a sated middle-aged housewife, often gilded or painted in iconic colors like blues, gold. They are massive and monumental, but always intimately exposed. They look at the viewer directly with their large open eyes, almost hypnotically, in fact reminding me of the Egyptian paintings where the painted image, the people are always gazing directly into the look of the viewer. Presented with a great dose sometimes of irony and witticism, they are always aggressive. Known for his heads, again, fiberglass and very, very strong women. Then I go to the work of Sonia Khurana, a girl who was born in Saharanpur, working with gender and sexuality. Again, her work, if you look at, she's a video artist. Her earlier work, the Zoetrope was one of her earlier works. The Wailing Well. This is a very interesting performance she's done called The Logic of Birds, which could only be done in Barcelona. Think of an artist lying here in a place. There will be 10 people saying either it is nuisance or there will be a PIL filed in any city of India, or a woman lying like that, I don't think she would be quite safe. But she did this work in Barcelona. Her art practice actually centers around the poetics of inner experiences and the polemics of being in the world. She works with lens-based media and the moving image with performance. She often stages encounters with spaces, cities and people, as she did with this particular piece, and she continuously reconsiders the space of the political played out throughout the states of strangeness, alienation, displacement and embodiment. So this work too, a girl who actually was from Saharanpur comes to Delhi goes off to the Rights Academy in Amsterdam and comes back to Delhi to work. And is showing in important, her work is not really collected by individual collectors because people will not want to keep the logic of the birds in their house, many of them. She's actually a collector's, a museum and a collector's dream. So this is where normally her works will be found. Then I want to show our greatest success story by way of art. After Subodh Gupta's recent thing that he's bought a house which made news in the newspapers in Delhi for 100 crores in golf links, the poor man has to answer all kinds of questions. Why should not an artist be living in upscale places? It's like when I moved to the university as a professor, you are supposed to be looking vague and you're not supposed to be wearing nice clothes and matching things. You're supposed to be looking a bit mad. So artists, why should an artist always be poor, kind of a thing, Why should he be having a jhola? So Subodh Gupta is very, very interesting, and there is a wonderful book called The Art of Not Making, which is talking of all these very important issues, that how the artist is just doing the work, because Subodh himself says that some of my best works are made in China or in America, and they're not being produced here. So questions of authorship, like when it is said, I think Barth wrote on the death of the author. So when in The Art of Not Making, in a similar way, he's been questioned a lot. But here I'm not talking of those issues. I am talking of how he becomes a cultural thief. That's what he writes in that book, and I really want to quote that. He was actually born in Khagol, which is known for the place of the ancient mathematician Aryabhat. Studied at the Patna College of Art, and after moving to Delhi, where he lives and works, today he's an international name. He is best known for incorporating everyday objects that are ubiquitous throughout India, such as steel tiffin boxes used by millions to carry their lunch, as well as the thali pans, bicycles, and milk pails. From these ordinary items, Subodh produces sculptures that reflect the economic transformation of his homeland and which relate to Gupta's own life and memories. In fact, he did a series of paintings which were called Sat Samundar Par. Because Bihar, where he comes from, is also known, I'm quite interested in this whole thing of the Girmitiyas, the agreements which were done, and whole huge migrations which took place to the Caribbean, to the Fiji Islands, to Mauritius. All that was actually, most of it happened from Bihar, and therefore he's done a huge body of work which was about, again looking at it through contemporary lens, called Sat Samundar Par, where you had baggages and suitcases packed on, airport loaders, very, very interesting. So what he says actually was that all these items which you see, they were part of the way I grew up. They are used in rituals and ceremonies that were part of my childhood. Indians either remember them from their youth, or they want to remember, or they do not want to remember them. Most interesting, what I liked in this his interview was, he says, "And I am the idol thief. I steal from the drama of Hindu life and from the kitchen. These pots, they are like stolen goods smuggled out of the country. Hindu kitchens are as important as prayer rooms." This you'd see in any household in, say, in the 90s. This kitchen was the most fashionable kitchen in the 90s. Of course now, more fashionable. Now ready-made German kitchens are the norm, but this was the most fashionable kitchens of the 80s and 90s, and this is the work I saw in the Venice Biennale, I think in 2007. A milk van, which you'd see anywhere. So how he kind of translates it. And I want to end with this periphery of the Kochi Mujiris Biennale. how it becomes a big center, or which is now in this firmament, in this constellation. Is this the periphery or is it the center? Is it regenerating the town? Because I know people from all over the world have come to Kochi to see what is happening. Also a lot out of curiosity, because they are curious to know, is it going to happen again or not? Here is Vivan, who's now working very hard to make sure that the Biennale has another life in the next 2 years. So we have, I wanted to bring this in, and I deliberately began with the Indian Art Fair, because that is the focus of a big central platform. Here is a periphery, this is Atul, your work, which was there at the Biennale, Vivan's work, which I absolutely loved there. Talur's work, which I kind of showed you earlier, but this is what he had done at the Biennale. Sudarshan Shetty's work. So all are mainstream. All the jewels of contemporary art are seen in this little town. And yeah, that's what I wanted to kind of end with, and leave it to all of you to find for yourself your own constellations. Thank you.
What a wonderful presentation, and of course for bringing us also into the focus. And I am feeling so embarrassed, in fact. So there's so much of praise being showered on me. I pray to God that it doesn't go to my head, and I stay on the ground where I am. Thank you so much once again. Now I invite, in the galaxy of stars which we have, there's another star which has descended, is Vivan Sundaram. We have been fortunate earlier also when he came a couple of years back to give his presentation, and along with him comes his sister, gifted sister Navina Sundaram. And we know, for those who have come later, I think we must all know that Vivan is the nephew of the great iconic Indian artist responsible for the modernistic movement, Amrita Sher-Gil, in whose memory we are organizing this art week.